In today's video, we're talking about 3 tips you need to know if you're starting a PhD right now. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, tip number 1 is all about looking at creating long-term documents. What I mean by this is that when you start your PhD, you need to learn about the new vocabulary in your research area that you need to be familiar with. You're going to be using in presentations, thesis writing, paper writing. So you want to have a document where whenever you come across a new term that you may not know, but you need to know, that is important, that sounds really good, note it down, write the definition so you have your own, you can say, personal research glossary. Really easy way to look at it. That's one of the create long-term documents I need to do. Number 2 is actually creating a lot of the techniques or protocols or flows, in terms of flowcharts that you need to know, whether it's doing the research, whether it's analyzing the research, whether it's the technique in the lab or the interview process if you're doing qualitative research, whatever technique or protocol or method, for want of a better phrase, that you need to know. You want to make a long-term document where you have it. Again, you can use Google Drive, OneDrive, something that's maybe cloud storage based if you want, or just have something on your own laptop. And with that method one in particular, you want to just note down methods you come across, or methods that you need to know, or methods that you probably search that you think are really important. Note it down so then you can always have a 1 page document or one document if you want to look at it like that. It probably will be longer than 1 page when you think about it. You can look at that and then always refer back to it whenever you're either struggling or deciding ideas. Okay, what methods do I have that maybe I've come across recently that I need to potentially make use of or report it in my paper or my thesis. The other one is looking at research, so research papers, research articles, research conferences. Make a note of that in another separate document. And what you can do with that is just note down the author, the journal, because that journal might be interesting for you to publish in later on. And then you can look into that further along. So you want to have a separate document for all of these 3 things. You can have documents for other things, not a problem. But you want to have documents for your glossary, documents for your methods, and documents for research. And the research is particular because the next tip is looking at this in a little bit more detail. So why don't we talk about that? Now, whereas tip number 1 was looking at research in general related to your research, tip number 2 looks at not just the papers in particular that are very niche to your research, but very niche to the particular nuances of your PhD in particular. What I mean by this is there's a lot of particulars, but in regards to your phase of your work right now, and along with that is published theses that are very related to your style of research and related to your structure of your research. Now, I got a lot of help by looking at published theses that had a very similar style to what I was doing. So it really helped me to visualize how I should structure my story in my thesis and then the papers I was trying to publish at the time after that. And that became really important. If I knew that early on, then it would help me to structure my work a bit more. So I can see, okay, what is enough, what isn't, what fits where, and then how can I, have my novelty perhaps in my research. So I wish I only knew this in my third year of my PhD. So I wish I knew this a lot earlier. And that in particular is this tip number 1, tip number 2 is not just the publish kind of research papers and find them and then house them. It's also find published theses in particular that is related to your research, compile them, and then start to look at similarities and differences between them for your particular research. I think that's very, very important. Now, tip number 3 is actually very important for you generally as a new PhD student, not just related to research, but your general life, and that is mastering your calendar. So what I mean by that is very early on, you want to start time blocking and scheduling time for your research, time for understanding your research, time for doing your research, time for your meetings. But very, very importantly, time for yourself. If it's in your calendar and you made time for it, you're more likely to do it. And if you time block time for yourself, just like you time block time for other things, you start to realize, okay, the amount of work I'm doing is not feasible because I've actually not been able to plan time for yourself. And that's something I really struggled with throughout my whole PhD and even my postdoc time, that I was planning time for experiments. I wasn't really using my calendar the way I should do, learning from a lot of these productivity gurus on the internet and YouTube and the books that I try to read, where time blocking everything you do gives you that idea if you're overworking or underworking or even not spending time for yourself. That's also very, very important. So very early on, you start to structure your week, you're getting in the groove, you start to understand, because a lot of your time in the first 6 months would be understanding the research that you're doing. And if you're doing that, then at least early on, you can see that, Friday afternoon or Monday morning, you can start to, do maybe other things. middle of the week, Wednesday, you can maybe finish early and do any extracurricular activities. If you're new to the city, you can time block that time to explore or do something that you maybe new or something you want to continue, whether it's a hobby, whether it's a sport, whether it's spending time with friends, spending time with your loved ones, whatever it is, you can start time blocking in your calendar. Something I learned from Ali Adam a lot is he says if it's not on my calendar, it won't happen. And it's a really good way to make sure that everything's nice and structured without being too rigid, but then you don't have to remember everything because it's in your calendar. And then you can start to visualize it, how much time you're spending to your PhD, how much time are you spending on your maybe side hustles if you want to do it. For me, like this, for example, how much time are you investing in yourself, whether it's training, whether it's mentally related, whether it's, physically related, whatever it might be, start to master your calendar. It'll be very, very important for you, your supervisors, and your colleagues so you know where you stand and the different priorities you have. So guys, those were 3 tips that can help you under 10 minutes that I think would be really beneficial for you if you are starting your PhD or even starting your master's. I do think these tips are actually really helpful. Note them down, start to make those documents. Believe me, it will help you in the long run. If you want to look at other content that I try and share in terms of tips and advice for the Research Life, Instagram page is over here. I have a newsletter that you can subscribe to if you haven't done already. Link is in the video description. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, tell me out. And like this video so it can help reach many more researchers in the algorithms of the planet Earth. You can do. And in any case, I shall see you soon. Take care.